outside Atlanta. You can go on and on. I don't even think that's Biden. He's long gone, or he's some kind of a vegetable lying flat all day long, asking for his candy. Um, he's got his puppet masters. I think it's basically Obama and Victoria Nuland. That's who I think is controlling the Biden show. But I'm not here to talk about the Biden show. I want to talk about the danger coming that is not imminent. It's present. It's not about to start up. It's not even just starting up. It's been going on for several months. It has to do, Sean, with the double-edged sword. That's what I describe it as. In the home front, we got dollar problems with the big banks, with the Treasury bond, and with the U.S. government debt. And on the foreign side, we have even our allies dumping in large amounts Treasury bonds, and we've got the BRICS. They're about to come out with a gold token, which is very much misunderstood. I think I've got most of it figured out. It is not going to be a currency. So the BRICS are going to declare a new payment system that's not dollar-based. So we're in the process of losing the global currency reserve, which has two sides: savings accounts, like with central bank Forex bonds, and trade payment that is done in the dollar. And both are going away. And that could not be more dangerous for the U.S. economy. Where it hits home is we're not going to have a great deal of variety or depth of import supply. And we're going to see scattered price inflation. I'd like to talk a lot about the treasuries and the gold token from the BRICS. I've got in my July report that got posted last Sunday, I've got two key sections. One's on the dollar and one's on the bond. And I urge people to go to golden-jackass.com and sign up, because this is not what you will see in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the LA Times. And we're starting to see Rickards now come around. Jim Rickards, that bald fart, cabal spokesman, former Langley agent, once a Langley agent, always a Langley agent, once a Langley hitman, always a Langley hitman, once an Illuminati member, always Illuminati member. We got I'm sorry, I'm a pain in the ass sometimes, but I try to be pleasant. The U.S. government debt, this is where rubber hits the road. U.S. government debt is not going to be financed anymore. U.S. government debt will not be financed by foreign bond bidding anymore. U.S. Treasury bonds will have failed auctions. Foreign nations will be dumping their treasury because the yuan from China is gradually becoming the petro payment standard announced by Saudi as part of the BRICS and announced by Saudi to spread within OPEC. So BRICS is going to merge in policy with OPEC. They're going to go to the Chinese yuan and payment system. They're going to go to the gold token. And the U.S. government is going to lose its ability to finance its deficit, which is, for people who don't quite understand it, we build up a government deficit, and every month or two, usually every month, except for April, we launch $150 billion of supply and securitize it as U.S. Treasury bonds. Well, it sounds easy, but it's not, because there are no bidders anymore. They don't want it.
Yeah, there's no buyers.
There's no buyer. It's a buyer's strike, and it's not in the news. And I got a way of interpreting it, Sean. Our vassal slave states will continue to bid, and that's Germany and Japan. But I think they got a back door. As soon as they buy it, as soon as they clear it, it goes straight back to the Fed, and they get their local currency. It's like a quick stop. It's for show. But we're going to lose our Treasury bond support. And for those who don't quite understand the ramifications, we're losing the petrodollar standard. It's going to become a de facto, I think, transitional petro-yuan standard. Later, maybe not so much later, the BRICS token will be used, and it'll essentially be a gold-backed system. Whew! We're going to lose, I've said this 5 times, we're going to lose our treasury bond support. We're going to have difficulty covering our deficits, and we're going to do it by monetizing. Sean, this is Zimbabwe. We are now going full boat Zimbabwe.
Can I ask you something? I put this chart in front of Colin Plume just the other day. What does this chart mean to you? Does this sort of quantify what you're saying about the United States losing its bond support? Look at the price of gold. Look at the TLT basket here. The 7-year chart, well, they stuck together like brother and sister, and now they're diverging big time in just the past few months.
Well, it started, I see, in the spring of 22. Okay, so that's a year and a half, not quite a year and a half. Yeah, that supports my point. Look at just one little data point. Japan, in a 12-month period ending in February, dumped $238 billion of treasury bonds. That's $250 billion almost. It wasn't in the news, not much. When it was, I saw it in the news, but it's a brief mention like, oh, by the way, we got a minor point here. It's not minor. And there's a paradox there. When any major nation sells the treasury bond, their own currency is harmed because their own currency has the US dollar and the treasury as its basis. All Forex currencies have the dollar and treasury bond as its basis. This is mind-numbing what's coming. We're going to lose our treasury bond support. We're seeing the biggest acceleration in selling of treasury bonds in the last few months than in its history. And it's not in the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times. Okay. When the petro-yuan, this is another consequence. This is very big. When the petro-yuan takes over, or when I should say the petrodollar completely falls apart and other systems come in, the customers to OPEC, the customers to the Persian Gulf oil producers, and by the way, Iran is back in OPEC, all the customer nation, they call them client states, all of those countries begin to dump the treasury bond and dollar assets. Okay, there is a financial firm, it's called Amundi, and Amundi is the biggest European, not sovereign wealth fund, wealth management. It's like a mutual fund, but it's like their BlackRock. It's a $2 trillion asset under management BlackRock type fund in France. And 2 weeks ago, they announced, Sean, they make the announcement, and it's not even the U.S. news, that they're divesting all their U.S. dollar assets, meaning treasury bonds. Now, imagine all the different financial structures, investment structures that have the treasury bond as its basis. Wow, an arbitrage of, say, interest rate swap derivatives, our bond derivatives versus the long bond. That's hedge funds in the United States. But what about hedge funds in Europe? They're going to dump them. What about all the different insurance company and pension companies that have their treasury bond as the basis of financial investment strategy? Yikes! In Europe, they're going to dump them. Okay, we are in extreme danger territory right now. Right now. OPEC has merged with the BRICS. I'd like to talk a little bit about the BRICS token because they've got a brilliant design, Sean.
There's a lot of confusion about the BRICS token here. You're calling it a token. Let's talk about that, because what I think the world is hoping to see, at least those of us who are awake, is a gold-backed BRICS currency to challenge the hegemony of the criminal, now fully corrupt U.S. Federal Reserve fiat note. And by the way, I do want to talk a little bit about a CBDC in this conversation. This giant fat banker you see here is Augustus Carstens. I'm not sure if he got that big by eating children or just feeding himself a little bit too much food. But the point is that he said, and I quote, "We don't know who's using a $100 bill. With CBDC, the central bank will have absolute control. And also, we will have the technology to enforce that." So while the man eats children, and I say that euphemistically, although you do wonder, the Fed, the Bank for International Settlements, Jim, they want a CBDC. So to me, that feels like not only do they own the monopoly board, instead of doing a reset and a start over, they want to continue to own the monopoly board. You got to rent everything, you'll own nothing, you'll be happy. I mean, that's the Klaus Schwab model, right? But I want to talk about CBDCs, but go ahead.
Can I do the BRICS before the
yes,
CBDC?
Yes.
I call it the CBDC war, by the way. There's no agreement anywhere. But let me just say that and table it for now, because I'm loaded for bear in my little head with the BRICS and their token. They had a date of May 23rd at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, SPIEF, which, by the way, is now overshadowing the Davos. Notice that Davos happens and no one gives a shit. And then St. Petersburg Economic Forum happens and everybody's got their eyes on it. What's going on? 45 nations signed $23 billion worth of trade deals. Okay, the important thing for me is the structure of the BRICS token. Now, I know I know a lot of people are craving, lusting even, for a BRICS gold currency. But would you settle for something better? I love it. This is as entertaining as it is frightening and historically unprecedented. They're not going to do a BRICS currency. Gold back. They're not going to do that. They're going to do something better and more clever. And I give a lot of credit to Putin and his team. And it could have some Chinese design behind it, could have some Persian design behind it. I really wonder if they've hired some Western consultants. I really wonder that. I'm not going to get into that whole angle, but here
white hat consultants from the West, because if they're anybody from Banana Joe's United States Fruit Company, they're not going to be on board with anything you're saying here, of course, because they're all on board with United Nations Agenda 2030 and the total takeover.
Yeah, I'm talking about like an independent former Swiss financial analyst. Okay, just something like that. Or a British guy who's in his late 60s, he retired from London, and he's doing independent consulting work. And these guys get grabbed on by the Russian design team. Okay, here's what they have and why it's better. They don't have a currency. They're letting us on the Western side talk about the currency. And they're talking about a gold token. We're talking currency, they're talking token. Well, what's the difference? Well, a gold token is going to have a gold backing. For a country, let's just say France. Let's just make up one, France, because France is in the news. They're on my radar for a number of reasons here that I could get to. They're being forced into following the BRICS parade. France is going to have to develop and build up their gold foundation. And maybe they have a decent foundation, but I suspect that they dumped a lot of their gold reserves in service to Satan. I mean, the Anglo-American bankers, one and the same. So the French, and maybe another good one is South Korea. South Korea may not have a big gold reserve, but they're going to have to build up that gold reserve in order to earn and have available gold tokens. Okay, so in order to use the BRICS gold token method of payment that's going to supplant the US dollar as trade payment vehicle, these BRICS nations will have to be able to secure gold tokens. And the only way to do that is to build up their gold reserves. Okay, let's talk about what they are not and then what they are. What they are not is a currency. And as a result, the Anglo-American bankers, New York and London, cannot attack it. like they did the Turkish lira, like they did the Syrian, what is it, dinar or what? I don't know, real. No, usually royal monarchies have real. The Venezuelan bolivar, all these nations, the Lebanese currency, the Iranian rial. These nations had their currency attacked by the U.S. and London bankers. The gold token cannot be attacked if it's not a currency. And Sean, that's a very big advantage. Ask Turkey, ask Venezuela. Furthermore, the West is talking about the BRICS creating a bond. And the BRICS are not talking about making a bond. The BRICS are talking about a development bank, which would be kind of like an import-export bank, a development bank, like, you borrow $5 billion or $2 billion and you create a gigantic port with rail facilities at blah, 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 roads, etc. Okay. In other words, construction loan. That's not a bond. The BRICS Development Bank is not a bond. It's not going to act like a bond. So it can't be attacked like a bond. So the West, the Anglo-American bankers, will not be able to attack on a currency basis and a bond basis. Sean, that's a big advantage. Then there's no interest rate for them to worry about because there's no bond. So they're not going to be worried about an inflation mandate, a differential with respect to the bond yield. Not going to worry about it. Not going to worry about an employment mandate. So there are big advantages for not being a currency and not having a bond associated with it. That's what it is not. Oof, what it is a token. And as a token, they're going to allow it to be part of a bank account. And we're actually, this is so ironic. We're seeing Zimbabwe lead the, I can't say it without laughing. We're seeing Zimbabwe lead the way in forging this path. Their gold token is now, they're capable of depositing that at a bank account. They're capable in Zimbabwe of converting dollars into their gold token ledger, their bank account in Zimbabwe for gold tokens, and they're able to use gold to buy the gold tokens. So there's going to be a lot of demand for gold. Now, what are they? They are a place to dump treasury bonds. All these countries are going to have to build up their tokens in order to use, build up their gold reserves in order to use the tokens. They're going to sell treasury bonds. We've already seen, I put in my May report, we're going to see an avalanche of selling of treasury bonds. And here we are in August, and there's a news story about how in July we had an avalanche of selling of treasury bonds. I try to be 2, 3, 4, 6 months ahead so people can get away from avalanches that do harm. I'm not going to get into interest rate hikes. I'm not going to get into that. But there's a lot more going on here. If a lot of countries, like I take France, I take South Korea, because they're two big important countries, but they're not giants on the global scene. If they sell a lot of treasury bonds, they're going to make a phone call to the Department of Treasury. They're not going to put $10 billion on the market in the Treasury. It'll shut down. So they call the Treasury Department and say, we want to dump. They're not going to say dump. They're going to say, we want to relieve ourselves. They want to relieve themselves of $10 billion. So the Fed is going to soak it up, and the Fed will become the bad bank. I'm expecting the Fed and their balance sheet to rise. It's now about 9+ trillion. I think it's going to zoom up quickly to 12 to 15 trillion. The Fed is going to become the bad bank, owning bonds that nobody wants. Hey! All these dumping will take place in various locations. United Arab Emirates has volunteered to be a BRICS dumping ground for treasury bonds, earning the anger and ire of the Treasury Department at the U.S. government. This is ridiculously risky, Sean. When the UAE accepts treasury bonds, I think they've got a conduit to the Fed by virtue of the fact that their dirham currency is pegged to the dollar. They've already got the conduit. They don't have to build it. Poof. We are going to see a gigantic, massive sale of treasury bonds and purchase of gold. I've been studying for 2 months now, since May. Where is the supply going to come from? I think the Russians are sitting on 120,000 tons of gold.
I think China's sitting on at least 50,000 tons of gold by some estimates. They're retaining 2,000 tons of gold internally in that country every single year going back more than a decade. So by some estimates, I've heard China is sitting on perhaps as much and maybe more than 50,000 tons of gold. Meanwhile, at Fort Knox, what's said to exist in Fort Knox if it's there at all? 8,000 tons of gold backing the dollar? What a joke.
85 or 8,700 tons at Fort Knox.
Well, let me ask you this then, because for the layman, and I consider myself a layman, sometimes I listen to you and you get a little hard to follow because you're going into such deep analysis. Let's just keep it real simple for the audience. What you're saying here means what to the average U.S. citizen as the debt clock? By the way, I just looked at this a week ago. I was doing a new spot for Noble Gold, one of my sponsors. The debt clock literally a week ago was 32,300 billion. A week later, it's jumped up, at least according to this debt clock, by more than $300 billion. So almost $7 trillion in debt. Meanwhile, the interest payments alone on the U.S. national debt are almost reaching $1 trillion per annum. And you're saying that the Fed is going to continue to buy its own bonds. I mean, the end is in sight. The writing's on the wall. What does this mean to the average U.S. citizen?
It means that our import supply is going to become at first problematic and then difficult and then totally obstructed. It means we're not going to be able to bring in imports. It means that only our best friends among foreign nations or vassal states like Japan will accept treasury bills at the port. It means we're going to have a big, big problem with shortage of imported items. It means we're going to see a black market from China through Mexico and Canada, probably with trucks driving through the tunnel systems underground, providing a black market for imported goods, and the prices won't be as bad as what they otherwise would have been.
Well, let me just point one thing out before you continue here. You're familiar with this usdebtclock.org, right? You've seen this before? Okay. Sure. So these guys have done an expert job over the years of converting the dollars in existence to what the real price of silver and gold should be right now. This used to say something like 10, 11,000 gold, something like 700 plus silver per ounce. They've stopped calculating that price here, Jim, and that's because I think the debt is going up so exponentially, they can't even calculate the numbers. I mean, that's my guess, but the dollar to silver ratio in 1913 was $2.76 per ounce. And as recently as a couple months ago, I think the figure here on silver was $700, $800, $900 per ounce. They've stopped calculating it.
Well, you're focusing on the numerator, the debt. I focus on the denominator, and that's why I think they stopped. They don't know how much silver we have. What do you divide? What's the volume of silver? What's the volume of gold?
Yeah, there was a deficit. There was a deficit last year of, I believe it was 240 million ounces of silver, meaning we were burning as a world more than 240 million ounces of silver, more than the global production supply that is around 900 million ounces. Meanwhile, the criminals on Wall Street who manipulate it every single day, they would have you believe that silver is something like a $2 trillion annual market. It's completely preposterous. That's the paper market.
Yeah, I want to point out something regarding the unit of trillion. Okay. I have two examples. One is if you have a million $1 bills stacked up, it reaches to the top of the Empire State Building. If you have a billion $1 bills stacked up, let's not worry about compression and stuff like that. Okay.
You're going to take us to the moon with a trillion, aren't you?
It's the stratosphere, the outer level of stratosphere for a billion $1 bills, and it is 1/4 of the way to the moon for a trillion. Okay, that's one example. What is a trillion seconds?
Yeah, I know you're going to take us. You're going to take us back to the time of Jesus or something, or before that.
Well, a lot more than that. a lot. I'm going to take you back to the dinosaurs. Um, I did a calculation. It's not hard. You got 31 and a half million seconds in 1 year. You just multiply them out. Get it all. I don't want to go through it. It's really simple. The number of minutes in an hour, the number of seconds in a minute, the number of days in a year, whatever. Okay. Well, 31 and a half million seconds in a year, then 31 and a half trillion seconds are in a million years. Okay. A million years. So you're heading back, to the end days of the dinosaur, or, not quite. Dinosaurs are a long, long time ago.
Yeah, if you believe in dinosaurs, yeah, I know. The whole hidden history thing of this world is all poppycock, Well, let me just say something, though. So these lizard people like John Kerry, they want to spend $1.6 quadrillion on what? Stopping climate change, stopping the weather. So more money for bankers and the lizard people equal changing the weather. So just to put that in perspective, guys, about the Monopoly board, their funny money, and what a Ponzi scheme of control this is. $32 trillion in debt, and the skull and bonesman, the lizard man, John Kerry, he wants $1.6 trillion to curb what? Climate change? That's $1,600 trillion. That's how insane the narrative has become.
Well, Sean, I have to lay it out a little bit more accurately. They want a gigantic budget in order to kill the great majority of life on our planet.
That's right.
Okay, let's be real clear. Let's look what they're doing with the Dutch farms in the Netherlands. 2,000 farms have been taken over. I heard rumors that they're going to build low-cost housing for illegal immigrants, the unvetted immigrants from like North Africa and wherever. And the Netherlands is the number 2 food producer in Europe. So where's the food going to come from? They're trying to wipe out food based on nitrogen mandates. They're acting like carbon dioxide is a poisonous gas when it's essential to life on the planet. Just ask any tree. I love that.
Well, that's right.
A tree breathes in carbon dioxide and exhales oxygen.
Right. And the carbon dioxide levels on planet Earth right now are at record lows. And the bonesman will tell you with a straight face, because he's a grifter, he's a climate grifter, and his wife Teresa Hines flies around in a private jet, which now they claim they sold because he cares so much about the environment. But the lizard man, the skull and bonesman, John Kerry, will tell the American people with a straight face that guess what needs to be curbed next in the name of climate change? Agriculture. Farmers are 33% of the problem when it comes to climate change. So your point's a good one. They want to stop food production. Why? Because they want to depopulate the planet. Why? Because Bill Gates told us in his TED Talk, one of these numbers needs to get near zero. And one of those columns was people.
Yeah.
That's innovating to zero. All of us die.
I have been following a number of individual figures, leading figures, elite types, and their faces. And that ain't John Kerry.
John Kerry, whether that's him or not, that is one ugly dude. And I'm talking like Skeletor level evil. Like the evil that has embodied that guy has taken over his face. And the same is true with a lot of these other people, too. I don't need to name the names. You guys know them. They're on the Democrat side for the most part, and some rhinos like Liz Cheney. But let me just say that the other problem we have, and we don't need to get into this, but that CIA mask program is very real. And who the heck is Banana Joe, really? Because the ears are not the same ears as the guy from a decade ago. The teeth are not the same teeth from a guy a decade ago. And by the way, Trump keeps saying, I don't think that's him. That ain't the same guy. Trump is even saying it.
It's obvious. But it's kind of an IQ test. Okay, Sean, you want to talk about the CBDCs, and I'm loaded for bear. Should we go there?
Friends, thanks so much for tuning in. Just a quick word about our sponsor. There's no guarantee in any investment, so do your own due diligence. But I myself hold gold and silver. The US dollar has lost 85% of its value since the 1970s when Nixon decoupled the dollar from gold, and the government is bent on continuing the tradition. From now until the next elections, the government will simply print as much money as they want. The last time they did so, inflation went up 9%. Gold is the one asset that is proven to withstand this type of inflation. Invest in gold with Noble Gold Investments, and this month you can get a 24-karat, 1/4 ounce gold standard coin for free. Go to noblegoldinvestments.com now. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. It's the gold company I trust. Yeah, let's go there because they require our compliance. And the only compliance they're going to get, I think, in this nation is from the 70% of the people who can't think. That's the problem. The 30% of us who can think will never comply with their slave coin. But their problem's bigger than that. See, Americans are very myopic because we've been told since birth we're the most powerful, generous, incredible country on the face of the planet. Democracy exists nowhere else but here. By the way, we're not a democracy. We are a republic, a democratic republic. The mockingbirds always leave that part out. But the world's a very big place. So I'm not sure that the Fed is going to get everybody in the world on board with CBDC, but I know that's what the BIS wants.
That's what they want. But they came out a year ago with their concept and blueprint, and it got shut down for the Swiss CBDC, or, the Basel CBDC. I call it the Swiss because that's the country. Okay, the United States has its Fed coin, and nobody wanted that either. Well, why were they not wanted? Because they announced that they were not happy with the concept of decentralization, and they announced that they were not happy with the concept of transparency. They came out with their arguments against them, and nobody agreed with them across the planet. So we're going to be in the midst of a central bank digital currency war, or severe conflict, or standoff very soon, very quickly, and it'll be deep. The valid CBDCs will come from Russia, China, and Persia. I'm calling it Persia more than Iran because that's what they like being called. They have a gold-backed digital currency. They haven't launched them yet because they don't want the war to begin.